Welcome to my presentation on job hunting. So this is going to be a short presentation on sharing my experience of job hunting for 14 years. I've had a number of jobs in 14 years and I've noticed a change in how job hunting, how I used to do it over a decade ago to how it's done now. So I hope this gives some guidance on how to approach it, different ways that you can be noticed and how to stay positive when receiving rejections. I can't say it's easy. A lot of my presentation will focus around finding it in finance because that was a jump that I made a couple of years back now from administration into finance. So I hope this just gives you a little bit of sort of proof and a little bit of guidance in how you can make the job hunting experience positive for you. Okay, so let's start off. Let's look at CVs. So the important thing to remember about what should be on your CV as a general rule, it needs to be neatly presented. So employers aren't going to be looking at a CV that's all over the place, that's scruffy, that's got too many words on it. So make sure it's clean and it's easy to read. Secondly, it needs to be detailed, but it still needs to be kept concise. So don't start waffling. You can tend to repeat yourself quite a lot when you're trying to talk about the jobs that you have done or the experience that you do have, but don't be too in-depth because you will have the opportunity to be able to put more out there in an interview. But at the same time, you need to make sure that you're keeping everything that is on your CV concise so that it's easy. Again, going back to the first point, it's easy for the person that's recruiting to read. I can't stress this point enough. I absolutely believe this is key to successful job hunting. And I really believe that when you do this, you are going to be noticed a bit more. But this word here, adapt. Your CV must be adapted to every job that you are applying for. So your personal statement, the order in which your duties are listed in your roles, in your job, always adapt it. Make sure it's relevant to the job that you're applying for. Even if you're applying on, Read, Total Jobs, Indeed, where they say, oh, we'll save your CV, always make sure you adapt it a little bit because it does show that you're putting the time and effort into your job hunt. Keep it to 2 pages maximum. If you start sending in a 10-page essay, people aren't going to read it. They often don't have much time. So it's just about short, sharp, concise. This is who I am. This is what I can offer. And this is effectively you selling yourself to get an interview. And make sure that everything on your CV is work-based or relevant qualifications. Your potential employer, they're not necessarily interested in what crafts you do or what you like to do in your spare time. A lot of that personality can come out in an interview. What they're really going to be looking for, in my experience on a CV, is actually, this is my job description, this is my job criteria. Does this person fit it on paper? A lot of the more fluffy things, shall we say, can come out when you're actually talking to the people, whether it be over the phone, whether it be actually in a face-to-face interview. So make sure everything that you've got is work-based or relevant qualifications on your CV. And again, make sure you adapt it to the job being applied for. So if you've got your previous job and in that job you've done some invoicing or perhaps you've done a lot of talking to suppliers maybe, and you're applying for a job specifically in a sales ledger, you can still put the work that you've done with suppliers in, but maybe bring up the invoicing to the top of your list of duties in the job, in that work experience area on your CV. So it's just about giving them the most relevant information as quickly as possible. If they need to search through a really long list of things to find the bits that they're looking for, there's a chance that they might overlook it. But if you can, at the very top of your current job, say, I've done this, that and the other, and it applies to what they're looking for, then it will more than likely get them reading your CV even more. And never, ever on a CV lie. You must always be honest, because at the end of the day, you never ever know when you might be caught out. So don't say that you've worked somewhere where you haven't. Don't say that you've done something you haven't in a job. You know, or something that perhaps you only done once because you were, you know, so if you don't do bank reconciliations regularly and you've only done it once because you covered a colleague when they were off sick for a while, it's not worth putting it on there, because a CV really is about kind of solid things that you can say, yes, I can do this and this fits the criteria that you're looking for. So always be honest. And always make sure that everything on your CV you can back up with examples or actual qualifications, depending on what it is that you've written. So moving on, some companies will have their own application forms, and I have to admit I am a fan. When I'm job hunting, I really am a fan of when I see a company saying, please complete our application form. We don't just accept CVs. And there's a number of reasons for this, because CVs anybody can send in. And, you know, companies, agencies, employers, they will all get bombarded with CVs. Application forms take a little bit more time, and it requires people to think about the questions that they're asking, and you know, these questions are going to be relevant to the employer. They're looking for certain things to come out of the question. So when you're writing your application forms, always keep in mind that this is the way that you're going to be able to sell yourself of why you should be interviewed. So you're saying on this application form, the reason that you should interview me for this position is ABC. So everything they ask you on that on that application form will be relevant in some way to the job that they are recruiting for. A lot of the questions may come through as fairly generic, but what you write in them needs to be relevant, and that will then give them a sense of why they should interview you. A bit like with the CV, make sure your answers are detailed, but always make sure they're actually relevant to the question you're answering. It's so easy when you start typing away, answering all the questions, and you can start to go off on a tangent. But bring yourself back, look back at the question, take a breath when you finish typing, go back to the question, and then just start going through it and identify, is there anything in your answer that isn't relevant to the question that they've answered. So it's always so easy just to keep typing, keep writing, but make sure you go back to the question and then take out anything that isn't relevant. So if you're handwriting, it's probably better to write it on a bit of paper first, or at least take very regular breaks to compare to the question. If you're typing, go back, delete things, and make sure that you're detailed, but again, keep it concise and relevant. One of my biggest things is, if they ask you what qualifications you have on the application form, or they ask you what your experience is, don't say please refer to the attached CV. Even if they ask you to send a CV in with your application form, it's such a way of showing how uncommitted you are to it. It might be frustrating that you have to keep typing things out. You know, or you could do a copy and paste, but check it looks right, check it's, you know, the format of it looks presentable. But don't just say please refer to attached CV. I personally think that's a surefire way of your application being disregarded. You must be truthful and positive. Your answers should always be things that you can back up if questioned on in interview. And all of your answers must remain positive, even if there's a question in there asking about a time that something went wrong, perhaps something that what your weaknesses are. You know, it's fine to say and describe these situations, but you must always finish on a positive. They don't want to employ people who always look at the negative in things. So make sure you're always truthful and positive. Don't rush an application form. So obviously there will be a time limit in terms of when the job closes. But my absolute key point with application forms is you must put the time and effort into writing them. It really shows sort of generic answers. It kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. Having read application forms in previous roles before I had a career change, it really does kind of stick out when people are using generic kind of stock phrases on their application forms. So you really need to personalise it. Take your time. Don't rush it. Reread everything you say. Check your spelling. Check your grammar. Have somebody else read it for you. Does it make sense to them? That's quite a good thing, going back to the point here about it being relevant to the question that the form's asking. Get somebody else to read it. They can see the question. Does your answer actually respond to that question? But put the effort in and really don't rush it. So next then, this title of this slide might be familiar to some people. I don't have any experience. So you've come across this job, you really want to apply for it, but they say must have experience. It's so hard. It really is so hard. However, stop, look at yourself and think carefully. And the reason I say this is because everyone has experience of some description. And this is where you really need to be very positive about yourself, believe in yourself, and show the employer what it is that you have and that you can offer them. I really believe this is absolutely key in all the applications I've done. You know, it's very much come across that if I can say this is what I think I can offer you, I've always become a little bit more successful, rather than either not applying for it because you're not going to get anywhere, you know, or sending something generic and they say, no, that doesn't work for us, that doesn't meet our criteria. So how do we do this then? So there's some things that you can consider. Transferable skills. So everybody has some sort of skills, even if this is the first job that you're looking to get after leaving school. Everyone is going to have some sort of transferable skill. So these skills, have a look at what you do. So these skills can be work related, they can be study related, anything, because there will be something that you can offer an employer. So the sort of things I'm thinking about here is, if you've worked in an office before, then you are going to have things such as communication, and this could be with the public, it could be with a CEO maybe, it could be things of a difficult nature, you know, complaints, that kind of thing. If you've worked in retail, so just applying it a little bit more to finance, so if you've worked in retail before, you may well have done things like cash handling. You may have done looking at price increases. You may have had to have known, you know, seasonal fluctuations in the work. And this doesn't have to be high level stuff. This doesn't have to be that you knew absolutely everything, but it could be that you work in a card retailer, for example, and you know that you're going to have your seasonal fluctuations, you're going to have your card changeovers, that kind of thing. You're going to have your back to schools or your thank you teachers at the end of term. And it's about bringing that out, bringing that understanding out of, you know, I have this, so I'm applying for this job and I believe this is going to be helpful because everybody has some kind of communication skill. And don't forget here as well that you're also going to have IT skills. So this could be, you know, presentations, a bit like I'm doing at the moment. It could be that you're really good on Excel. It could be that you're really good at, you know, typing up letters. So make sure that you really are looking at what it is that you can do. So don't say, I haven't got experience, I can't do that. What is it you can do, and see how you can apply that to the job. Now, this isn't going to work in every single job, of course it's not, but it will at least show the effort that you're putting into your application. So just moving on from that a little bit then, is what traits have you got that show your dedication and commitment? So, you know, people aren't necessarily looking for workaholics. They're not really looking for people that are only ever going to work and have nothing else in their life. However, there could be things such as, you know, voluntary positions. Do you have any voluntary positions? Perhaps you know, you help at, I don't know, a local church, or you have been doing some accounts work for a local scout group or brownie group or whatever it might be. Keep it concise on your CV, because the voluntary stuff isn't necessarily going to be the thing that they look for immediately, but what it does show is that actually you have dedication and commitment. It does show that you can stick at something. And the other thing you can think about, especially if it's your first or second job, you can have a look at, you know, are there any studies that you want to do? Or are you already studying? Especially if you're doing sort of home learning, distance learning, you know, that needs to go. That needs to come out in an application form and a CV, because it shows that you're dedicated to the field that you're working in. And also, what's your ambition for the future? And the reason I bring this up is that depending on the type of company you're applying for will depend on whether this is important. So a larger company are more likely to perhaps be more open to those that want to continue, that want to progress, that want to get promoted. A smaller company, although they may support their staff, they may not grow to the extent in which that you might want to go up the ladder by 3 rungs or something. And the reason that that's important is because a smaller company, they could be put off if somebody's on their application form, on their CV, is saying, I want to progress up to, you know, director of finance or chief finance officer, because they think that the person is going to leave in order to get that promotion, because the smaller companies won't necessarily be able to offer it. But having the ambitions is important, and is kind of a focus point for you in identifying whether the job you're applying for is right. Likewise, if perhaps a little bit like me, I've been asked in my current job, you know, where is it I want to go? And I've said, well, actually, I don't at the moment. You know, I am quite happy with what I'm doing. I'm at a level I want to be. I'm not necessarily wanting to step up. So, you know, if there's a company that's saying, you know, we want everybody to study, we want everybody to get, you know, this qualification, and you're not looking into that, is that the right company to apply for? So it works both ways. One, from a company perspective, in are you going to leave in a fairly short space of time because they can't offer you what it is that your ultimate ambition is? Or likewise, is it the right company for you if they're going to have the expectation and the pressure of promotion and perhaps continued study? And finally, you must stay realistic. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what's the harm in applying for that job? So, of course, if you haven't got any, if you haven't worked in finance before, then applying for, a finance manager position isn't realistic. However, if you see a finance administrator role, if you see a accounts payable, or a sales ledger, any kind of role that is realistic to what you could do, what's the harm in applying? At the end of the day, the worst they can say is no. But at least you've tried. And if you really make the application worth their while reading, I honestly think it does help. So make it personal, don't just be generic. So, great news. Your CV's been noticed, your application form was well written, and now you've been invited to an interview. Now what? Preparation. Always research the company you're interviewing for, and also the interviewer. With the introduction of LinkedIn, many years ago, it's a really good way of understanding the people that are interviewing, if they're on. I mean, not everybody's on there, but it's a good thing to have a look at them on LinkedIn, and identify, what experience have they got? Where did they come from? So it's always good because it can provoke questions, and it shows that you've actually got a genuine interest. So make sure you know what the company does. Make sure you have some relevant questions about the company. And on that point, make sure that those questions are things that you are able to either relate to or understand. So it's all good and well asking questions about commercial strategy, but if that doesn't mean anything to you, or perhaps doesn't have an absolute direct impact on the role you're applying for, then it's not really going to sort of show anything. Whereas if you say, do you believe, if you're going for an accounts payable position and you ask something about their processes, or something like that, it could then show that actually you've got a good understanding of what the role is and that you're interested in how they work. And then these two here, go over your CV and application form, make sure you understand it, make sure you know what you have written, but also role play it with somebody, maybe a partner, friends, family, anybody, and share your worries about the interview. It's understandable that you're going to be nervous, anxious, feel a little bit stressed about it, but as long as you're confident with what's on your CV and you're confident with what you've written in your application form, give some questions a go. Just break that kind of cycle of you don't know what's going to be asked, because you're not going to know what's going to be asked, but actually get somebody to ask you some questions that you're not expecting, and really just share what you're feeling about it, because it does help rather than just bottling it up. It does feel better to be able to say, I've got an interview tomorrow and I'm really feeling quite nervous about it. Then on the day, make sure you're smart and presentable. So give the job some consideration, perhaps ask what their dress code is, and always go one level above, in my opinion, always go one level above what their normal dress code is. If you're going for a corporate position in a big office in London, then probably suit and tie is the way forward, or a suit dress. But if not, then try to make yourself sort of fit in with the company, and make sure you're comfortable in what you're wearing. You need to look confident even if you are anxious and nervous. And there's no harm in saying, when you greet somebody and they're bound to say something like, oh, how are you, or something along those lines, it's okay to say, oh, I'm fine, thank you very much for seeing me, feeling a little nervous, but looking forward to speaking to you, or something like that, that really gives, shows that you are a little bit nervous, which is understandable, but also that you're happy to be there. Okay, be enthusiastic and believe in yourself. So this, for me, then really falls into the next line there. So being enthusiastic, be passionate about what you're saying, and the more, this is why I say keep it truthful, because when it's truthful, you can genuinely give across that belief in what you're saying. Just taking that line down there then, take a breath before answering and make eye contact. That doesn't mean to say you stare at them the whole time in their eye, but make eye contact when you start answering a question and a couple of times during your answer. Take a breath. So they've asked you a question, and just take a deep breath, count to 2 or 3 in your head, and then answer. And that for me has really helped with the nerves, stopped a bit of waffling, and really kind of just helps you ground yourself just very quickly before you actually go into your answer. So always make sure that you're showing the passion for the role, that you're showing what you can be, who you are, and what you can offer them. And the only way you're going to do that is actually if you believe in yourself and go in there believing that you are able to get this job. Then afterwards, after an interview, it can be quite tricky. So I would always suggest you follow up with an email to the agency that put you forward or the employer, just saying thanks very much for the interview. I look forward to hearing from you. Hopefully within the interview you would have got some idea of timescale. And you must understand that recruitment can take a while in large companies. It may be a second interview. It may be that they have to discuss it with other people. There's HR processes, so just be patient. And when you do get that feedback, whether it's positive or negative, always ask for feedback. Perhaps they might say something that you haven't considered before. Perhaps they say that they were concerned that you were too ambitious or something. Then it just gives you an idea of the answers that you gave, and learn from it. Ultimately, this is all a learning experience. So just a short thing then on using recruitment agencies. It is the kind of way recruitment is done these days. So I can't sort of stress enough how important it is for you to register with agencies. So some things to remember. You still need to make the effort. This is not an easy way out. It's not the quick way of finding a job. You have to make the effort in when you're applying for them through their websites or the job portals. You still need to make the effort. You need to show that there's a reason why you're applying for this job, and there's a reason why they should put you forward. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they want to make, they're going to get some money for placing somebody, but they want to make sure that they're placing the correct candidate. Ask some questions about the role and the company. Make sure it's what you're looking for. Make sure it's something that interests you, and it's a kind of company you want to work for. Are they large? Are they small? Are they global even? Understand the role completely before deciding whether you want to be put forward for it. Ask what timescales they're working towards. Are they expecting to get CVs this week, shortlist next week? Is it going to be a long drawn out process, or actually is this quite an immediate thing? And therefore you're going to know that you may have to take an interview date at short notice if called. Be honest and reliable. So again, going back to what I said earlier, they're going to be paid for the people that they put forward. And likewise, their reputation can be affected if they have candidates who fail to turn up for an interview, or fail to turn up when they're meant to start their role if they've been offered it. So that will affect the reputation of that particular agency. So make sure you're honest with them. Be reliable, and not only that, when you're reliable, they're more likely to put you forward for things. So if you go to the interview, you have positive feedback from that interview, but you weren't perhaps quite right for that particular company, they're more likely to put you forward because you're a strong candidate. And lastly, keep in touch with them. Follow up with them if you haven't heard from them in a fortnight or something, just a short email or a very quick phone call. You've normally got a dedicated person, hi, how's things going? What's the job market looking like? Just to let you know I'm still looking. I'm available for interview on such and such days. You know, really make sure that that your name is the one that they keep coming across. And even if you do see something on the website and you think, oh, I'd like to apply for that, give them a call, get in there and say, oh, I've just seen this pop up on your website. I wondered whether you'd be able to consider me for it, and tell them why you think you should be considered for it. So it's really important to build that relationship with agencies, and at the same time you will have to accept that some agencies are specifically looking for those that do have experience, so perhaps those that are more only one industry focused or something. So don't be disheartened if they do turn around and say, actually, we can't help you. There are other agencies that will be able to help you. But be aware that the same job can be advertised by different agencies, and if that's the case, going back to being honest, is let an agency know if you've already been put forward for that particular job by somebody else. You don't necessarily have to disclose who or anything like that, but you can just say, you know, everyone knows everyone registers with as many as they can, but this just gives them the heads up that actually, you know, you have been already put forward for that role by another agency, which then means that they're not going to put you forward, and they're, again, you know, the candidates they're putting forward are going to be good candidates, and they will be able to build up their reputation with not only their client but also with you, because they know that you're not going to kind of string them along, if you like. So I hope that gives you some kind of clue on how to go about agencies. So my final thoughts then for this presentation is, if you don't believe in yourself, why should a potential employer? Ultimately, you have to sell yourself to that employer or that agency as to why they should employ you or why they should put you forward for a job. If you don't believe it, nobody else will, and that a lot does come from, you know, putting that confident face on, you know, giving yourself that little boost. And if that means that, you know, you need to go out and sit in your favourite coffee shop or something for half an hour before you go into your interview, or, you know, you need to sit in a really quiet place to do your application form, whatever it is, if you don't put forward that belief, they won't believe in you. Not having experience in the exact area for that job doesn't mean you don't have any experience. So going back, what transferable skills do you have? How could you use it in a new job? Why are those skills going to mean that you're successful? Perseverance will pay off. That's the end of it. You have to keep going, otherwise you won't get anywhere. If you don't apply for things, you're never going to get a job. So there's no harm in applying for it. Just make sure that you can explain why you think that job's relevant. At the end of the day, it's hard work, it needs effort, and generic applications can be easy to spot. Put the effort in and you will get somewhere. The employers will notice you, will notice your application is different. But there is no easy route. You know, there are so many people looking for jobs, and I found, especially moving into finance, you know, I had 10 years experience when I done my career change into finance, and I had a lot of office experience and some retail experience, and it still took me a year to find my first finance job. So, you know, yes, it took a long time, but at the end of the day, it did pay off. The perseverance did pay off. There's going to be a lot of knockbacks, applications going unanswered, and rejections at the last hurdle. You've got to that interview, you've even had a second interview, and still you don't get that job. You have to just take them. Take a breath. You know, you've got to feel what you feel. Don't deny yourself the anger or the upset. But then you have to say, well, that one's gone now. There's other ones in the pipeline. There's other jobs that need to be applied for. Just keep looking. Keep going. Never give up, and believe in yourself. Thanks for watching.